Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zeroing in on a sector that's really vital for India's progress, especially for those of you tracking daily current affairs for the UPSC exams, wind energy.
Mm-hmm.
At COP28, the world made this pretty bold commitment to triple renewable energy capacity by 2030. Sounds ambitious, right?
It really does. But, well, a recent report from the Global Wind Energy Council, GWEC, it kind of introduces a dose of reality to that ambition.
Okay.
Indeed. Their Global Wind Report 2025 projects that we're currently on a path to meet only about 77% of the global wind capacity targets by 2030.
Only 77%.
Yeah, and this 23% gap, it's not just a number. It actually represents a significant delay in our ability to, head off the worst climate change scenarios and meet those Paris Agreement goals.
Right, limiting warming. So let's unpack why this matters.
Definitely.
And for our UPSC aspirants, understanding this shortfall is pretty crucial. It touches on energy security, climate action, India's sustainable development goals, all key areas for both mains and prelims prep. So in this deep dive, we'll look at the global wind energy scene based on that GWC report, then really focus in on India's progress, the challenges we're facing here, and maybe some potential paths forward.
Sounds good.
And our main source for this discussion is a detailed analysis by DTE.
Okay, so let's start with that global picture. In 2024, the world added about 117 gigawatts of new wind power capacity.
117 GW. That sounds like a lot.
It is, and it's actually a slight increase from a 116.6 GW in 2023. So the total global installed capacity is now a massive 136 GW.
Over a terawatt globally. Wow.
Yeah, but what's really fascinating, or maybe concerning, depending on how you look at it, is the distribution. China is just way out front.
How much are we talking?
China contributed 70% of all new wind capacity in 2024.
70% from one country.
Yep. After China, you've got the United States, Brazil, India, and Germany. They make up that sort of top tier.
That dominance from China is really striking. What are the implications of that? Relying so heavily on one nation for new capacity, supply chains, to dependencies.
Well, that's a critical point that definitely raises concerns about the resilience, maybe the diversification of the global wind energy supply chain.
Right.
Any disruption in China, be it economic or geopolitical, could have, significant ripple effects everywhere else.
Okay.
But we are seeing some interesting developments elsewhere, too. Onshore wind is really starting to pick up in places like Uzbekistan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. In fact, the onshore wind capacity in Africa and the Middle East actually doubled in 2024 compared to previous years. So that suggests a broadening global uptake, which is good news.
That growth in Africa and the Middle East is encouraging, but I heard there's a bit of a concerning trend in offshore wind.
Yes, that's right. Globally, only about 8 GW of offshore wind capacity was installed in 2024.
Only 8 GW?
Yeah, and that's a significant drop, about 26% down from 2023.
Why the dip? Offshore seems like it has huge potential.
It does. Stronger, more consistent winds out there. But the GWC report points to several big obstacles hindering overall wind growth, and offshore is particularly affected.
Like what?
Well, policy and regulatory instability in some key markets is a big one, plus really significant delays in getting project permits.
The red tape.
Exactly. And then there's the persistent issue of grid infrastructure, just not enough investment in upgrading grids to handle all this new renewable energy.
Right. You need the pipes to carry the energy. It's a classic problem, needing the infrastructure to support the ambition. What else is slowing things down globally?
Well, there are financial and market pressures, too. Inflation, high interest rates, they make these big capital projects tougher.
Mm-hmm.
And even things like trade protectionism are creating headwinds. Plus, the report notes that in some places, the way renewable energy auctions are designed isn't really effective at driving deployment quickly.
So it's kind of a complex mix of policy, infrastructure, and money problems slowing things down.
Pretty much, yeah.
Looking at the big picture then, what scale of deployment do we actually need to hit those climate targets, that COP28 goal?
Okay, so to meet that commitment and, have a realistic shot at limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, GWEC estimates we need to be installing around 320 GW of wind capacity annually by 2030.
320 GW a year, compared to the 1 in 17 GW we just did.
Exactly. It's nearly 3 times the current annual rate. It's a truly monumental scale-up that's needed.
Wow, that really underscores the challenge. Okay, let's pivot to India now. How does India's wind sector fit into this global picture?
So as of the end of March 2025, India's total installed wind power capacity stands at 50.04 GW.
Just over 50 gigawatts.
And in the last financial year, 2024-25, India added 4.15 GW of new capacity. That's up from 3.25 GW the year before.
So decent growth momentum there.
Yes, definitely positive momentum.
And how does this 50 GW place India globally?
We're currently ranked 4th in the world for total installed wind capacity.
Fourth is pretty good.
It is. Behind only China, the US, and Germany, it reflects, substantial progress over the years.
And within India, which states are leading the charge?
As of 2025, the top states for wind energy production are Gujarat, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. They have the best resources and policy support historically.
It's also worth mentioning India's domestic manufacturing strength here, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's a real advantage. India has a pretty robust domestic wind turbine manufacturing base. The annual production capacity is estimated around 18,000 milliwatt or 18 GW.
18 GW annual capacity, that's significant.
It is. It helps with energy security and deployment. And looking ahead, India also has substantial untapped potential, especially in offshore wind.
Right, I remember hearing about that. What are the estimates?
The National Institute of Wind Energy estimates potential around 36 GW just off the coast of Gujarat, and about 35 GW for Tamil Nadu. So huge potential there.
Okay, so India's made good progress, ranks well globally, has manufacturing capacity and big offshore potential. But there are always challenges. What are the key hurdles facing India's wind sector that maybe our UPSC listeners should be particularly aware of?
Yeah, there are several critical ones. A major one, maybe not surprisingly, is the complexity and just the time involved in land acquisition.
Land. Always tricky in India.
Exactly. Especially for the newer, bigger, more efficient turbines. Rotors over 150 meters now, they need significant land, maybe 7 to 8 acres per turbine.
And getting that land cleared takes time.
A lot of time. The process of converting land use, from agricultural to non-agricultural can be really slow and bureaucratic, causes major project delays.
Okay, land acquisition is a big one. What other major challenges?
Another crucial issue is the state of our grid infrastructure. It hasn't quite kept pace.
We mentioned that globally, too. Same issue here.
Yes. Many areas with really high wind potential, think parts of Rajasthan, Gujarat, coastal Tamil Nadu, they just lack sufficient transmission capacity to evacuate the power.
So you generate the power, but you can't get it easily to where people need it.
Precisely. Which means transmitting it over long distances, leading to higher losses and ultimately higher energy costs. The grid needs serious modernization and expansion.
Okay. Land grid. What about policy issues within India?
Policy inconsistencies are definitely a challenge, both at the national and state levels.
How so?
Well, for instance, incentives that used to help projects like accelerated depreciation or generation-based incentives, they've been withdrawn over time. That creates some uncertainty for investors.
Right. Predictability is key for big investments.
Exactly. And then you have differing state policies on things like tariffs, the power purchase agreements, even just getting approvals. It creates a kind of fragmented market which hinders smooth, uniform development across the country.
That lack of policy harmony must make things complex for developers trying to work across states.
It really does. And then, of course, there are financial hurdles.
The upfront costs.
Yeah, wind projects need substantial capital investment upfront, and smaller developers especially can find it difficult to access affordable financing that can limit competition and just slow down the overall pace.
Okay. We touched on India's manufacturing base earlier, which is a strength. But are there any vulnerabilities in the supply chain within India?
Well, yes. While we're strong in manufacturing towers and gearboxes, the availability of wind turbine blades can be a concern.
Blades specifically.
Yes. It means we still rely on significant imports for blades, and a considerable portion of those come from China.
Back to the China dependence point.
Right. It raises concerns about supply chain stability, potential disruptions, and even cybersecurity risks associated with imported components in critical energy infrastructure.
That's a really critical point, linking supply chains to national security almost. Anything else on the challenge front? Environmental, maybe?
Yeah, there's the emerging challenge of e-waste management from wind projects.
E-waste from wind turbines.
Well, from the components. Things like outdated control systems, inverters, batteries. They contain hazardous materials and need specialized disposal, and the blades themselves, made of composite materials, are actually quite difficult to recycle effectively.
So a future waste stream we need to plan for.
Definitely needs attention.
Okay, that's a fairly complex set of challenges. Land, grid, policy, finance, supply chain, waste. Let's shift to solutions. What strategies can India employ to strengthen wind energy production and tackle these hurdles? Thinking especially from a policy and implementation angle relevant for our UPSC listeners.
Right. Well, strengthening the policy framework itself is paramount. That means things like fast-tracking project clearances, really simplifying those land acquisition processes we talked about.
Streamlining.
Yes. And implementing a consistent, uniform national wind energy policy, something that provides long-term certainty for investors.
Makes sense. What else on policy?
Repowering is another key strategy. Replacing older, less efficient turbines on existing wind farms with modern, high-capacity ones, you get more power from the same site.
Good point. Maximizing existing locations. Now, streamlining land acquisition sounds good, but are there more direct measures to tackle the land issue?
One idea gaining traction is establishing dedicated land banks.
Land banks. How would that work?
Basically, the government or agencies would identify and secure parcels of land, get all the clearances done up front, make sure it's conflict-free, specifically for renewable energy projects.
So developers could access pre-cleared land.
Exactly. It could significantly cut delays, ensure clear titles, potentially lower costs, and really boost investor confidence.
That sounds like a very practical, proactive measure. Okay, what about tapping into that huge offshore potential we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, to really harness offshore wind, India probably needs to foster more collaborations with countries that are leaders in this space, like Denmark or the UK.
To learn from their experience.
Exactly. Gain technical expertise, maybe adopt best practices to speed up project development here. We could also explore integrated projects, like combining wind and tidal energy in suitable coastal areas.
The wind and tidal together.
Could optimize generation, maybe provide a more stable, reliable power supply.
Interesting. And what about combining wind with solar? Hybrid projects.
Oh, absolutely. Hybrid wind-solar projects are already happening and make a lot of sense. You get better use of the land, and often the generation profiles complement each other. Solar during the day, wind often stronger at night or different seasons, more stable overall output.
Right. Better grid integration, too, potentially. Now, on the financial side, how can India spur more investment?
More dedicated financial instruments could help. Promoting things like green bonds, specifically for wind energy projects.
Tapping into ESG investing.
Precisely. And also leveraging carbon credit mechanisms more effectively, making sure wind projects can properly monetize the emissions reductions they achieve. That improves the project economics.
Okay, targeted financial tools. What about boosting our domestic manufacturing, especially for those components like blades where we have import reliance?
A production-linked incentive or PLI scheme specifically for critical wind energy equipment blades, maybe advanced towers, gearboxes, could be really effective.
Like the PLI schemes for electronics and solar.
Exactly like those, aimed at building domestic capacity and reducing import dependence. And alongside that, we need investment in skill development.
Training people.
Yeah, we need a skilled workforce for manufacturing, yes, but also for installing and maintaining these complex systems, especially as we move towards offshore wind, which requires different skills.
Good point. Investing in people is crucial for the long haul. Are there any sort of next generation or emerging technologies India should be keeping an eye on?
Definitely. Looking ahead, exploring the potential of floating wind turbines could be important.
Floating, not fixed to the seabed.
Right. That technology could unlock vast deep-sea wind resources, where the wind is often even stronger and more consistent, but the water's too deep for traditional foundations.
Opens up new areas.
Exactly. And another big one is integrating green hydrogen production, using surplus wind power when generation is high but demand is low to produce hydrogen through electrolysis.
And that hydrogen can be used elsewhere.
Yes, to decarbonize other sectors like industry or transport or stored as a clean energy carrier. It helps balance the grid and adds value to wind power.
So lots of potential solutions and future avenues. It's clear, though, that a really comprehensive, multi-pronged approach is needed to push India's wind sector forward.
Absolutely. It needs action on policy, infrastructure, finance, technology, skills, all moving together.
To meet those national goals and also contribute properly to the global climate effort.
Precisely. India, as we said, has made commendable progress. But that GWEC report really underscores the scale of the climate challenge. We need a significant acceleration.
Right.
Addressing these hurdles, land, grid, policy consistency, supply chain vulnerabilities, and really embracing those newer technologies like offshore and green hydrogen, that's going to be crucial.
Crucial for India to meet its own ambitious targets and also, frankly, to play its part as a major economy in global climate action.
Couldn't agree more.
So this deep dive into the global and Indian wind energy landscape, drawing from that DTE analysis of the GWEC report, it really highlights both the urgency and the complexity of the task ahead. And for all of you preparing for your UPSC exams, understanding these energy transitions, the challenges, the policy levers, it's absolutely vital. It kind of leaves us with a crucial question, maybe for you to think about. Considering India's ambitious renewable energy targets, what do you personally see as the single most significant practical obstacle to actually implementing them successfully?
That's a good question to ponder.
And maybe, what innovative solutions would you propose? We really encourage you to think critically about this. It's such an important issue for India's future.
Indeed, it warrants careful thought.
If you found this detailed analysis insightful, perhaps useful for your UPSC prep, please do like and subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll have more in-depth discussions on crucial topics affecting India and the world.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Absolutely. Don't hesitate to leave a comment below with any further questions you might have or your own perspectives on this really vital issue. And just a reminder, the information we discussed today is primarily sourced from the detailed reporting and analysis found on DTE.